Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Someday with Jay Barsky. This episode's guest is self mastery coach and compassion expert Dr. Nilesh Satguru. After over a decade of practicing medicine, Nilesh now helps entrepreneurs awaken true success with compassion. His work spans 5 continents, and his client list includes 7 figure serial entrepreneurs, ex athletes, authors, executive coaches, and award winning charity founders. You'll hear us talk about his 5 pillars of self mastery, different meditation practices, and much more. So, with that being said, I hope you enjoy your someday with Dr. Nilesh Sadhguru. Nilesh, what's up? How you doing?
I'm very well.
I know we were talking a little bit before we started this about like target audience that I have for this, and which is really why you are kind of a I guess a dream guest to have on here because definitely your message, things you've talked about. One thing that when I was going through a lot of just your social media content, and something that I actually was talking about recently on my previous podcast is just the importance of identity. And I was talking about a little bit because I was reading the book Atomic Habits by James Clear and I was just mentioning something I took from that is just how your habits identify you. And looking through some of your material, you were talking about like a lot of your stuff that, the importance of your identity. And one thing that I was curious about is your background and something that you transitioned to originally, or which you came from before, was being a medical practitioner, in which now you are a coach for compassionate self mastery. Can you explain kind of a little bit of that journey and why'd you transition from one career into another?
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks for having me. And I'm going to share a pretty interesting story because it's not the trodden path. But I want you to picture the scene. I was 27 years old, and I used to drive through this little leafy village in the UK, in a green UK, and I would dream of being what's called a general practitioner, or in the States you call it like a family doctor. And we have this saying in the UK, like being an elbow padded GP, like, you wear one of those blazers with the elbow pads on and you're a village GP. Well, before I got into anything into spirituality, this dream kind of ended up happening, if you like, manifesting. And there I was, 27 years old, and I had ticked off all of my life goals. I didn't really realize it, but I was in the top position that I could be in, which I felt very grateful for. And I had a son, I had this new house, and I'd go to these parties and people would say, "Oh my gosh, you got these things." But inside, I had that same feeling that a lot of people had, which is this it? Does this feel quite aligned? Is there something
Mhm.
more? And so I started to ask questions. What I now know is the place that I worked wasn't fully aligned with my values. But like many people who are in jobs, I continued to work there for 3 years and went through a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, a lot of challenges. And that really taught me the practice of compassion. Essentially, I had a patient complaint that showed me how uncompassionate I was with a patient. And that helped me look in and realize how uncompassionate I was myself.
Mm.
And that was the first seed of this mission that I'm on to ripple compassion out into the world of entrepreneurs and into the world was the patient complaint I experienced back in, well, that would have been, yeah, like 8 years ago now.
One thing that I've heard you talk about in the past, or going through some of your interviews, was you were talking about like 5 pillars of self mastery. So, can you discuss what a little bit of what those are?
It came from my study of what's called lifestyle medicine. So when I was working as a doctor, I started to ask a lot of questions. I see people that weren't getting better, and I was frustrated. I couldn't make them better. 4 out of 5 people I was seeing, I was giving more pills to. And so someone at work said, "Have you heard of this thing called lifestyle medicine?" And that's a specialty that could treat and reverse conditions without drugs, just through lifestyle change. And so it's interesting you mentioned James Clear's book. That's one of the books that set me off on that journey. But
Yeah.
another book and another person which is transformational is someone called Martin Seligman. And he is a forefather of the positive psychology movement. And so he taught us that there's something beyond happiness. So this is where I'm getting to the five pillars. Bear with me. There's something beyond happiness, and that is what's called flourishing. And you can actually measure this level of well-being based on five things: positive emotions, how engaged you feel with life, quality relationships, the life of meaning, and accomplishments. And when I read this book, I had a massive aha because I was also studying with the world's leading high performance coach called Brendan Mashard. And he studied high performance. And I realized there was a massive overlap here. And so, five pillars of self mastery is a compassionate mind, a courageous purpose, calm energy, collaborative connections, and creative flow. And essentially, these are the ingredients we know with data based on millions of points of data and positive psychology. These are the ingredients to live a life of freedom, fulfillment, and flourishing.
So how did you kind of develop these five pillars over time?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, on one side of in medicine, I learned about something called uh, evidence-based medicine. So, being a doctor, we learned a lot about reading research papers. So, I wanted to bring that into my world of coaching. I wanted to bring more science and evidence behind things because there's levels of evidence, right? You go see your friend who says, "Hey, I just tried this type of meditation. It's really good." Great, that's anecdotal evidence. That works. That might work for one person. But then there's higher levels of evidence, which is based on a lot of data points. And so I wanted to develop a method that was based on a lot of data. And that's how I developed the five pillars of self mastery. It's based on positive psychology data. We know it works. But also, I also learned through my various study over time that science has its limitations. And so I also went into the spiritual world because often spirituality is just science that hasn't yet been proven.
Yeah.
Um, and I pulled parts of that into my method as well. But the five pillars of self mastery are essentially based on a lot, like millions of data points, studies over 50 years, and and you see compassion sits at the top of that quite simply because it's got dozens of thousands of studies that prove it's really the single most powerful thing you can do for your emotional well-being, for your personal growth. And a big concept also I'd like to speak today is the difference between self-esteem and self-compassion, which is essentially the biggest lie, misconception, untruth that the personal development industry tells you, is this imbalance between self-esteem and self-compassion.
It's funny that you mentioned about like your journey into the spiritual world. Like I would say I'm a pretty spiritual person. I would say, especially a few years ago, I took a yoga teacher training class. It was more just for self practice for myself and kind of opened a different world for me of just like different things to take care of my health that I didn't really look at. Like something I've being like a more of a public health background, I've been just more relied on just science and things I've read instead of things that kind of like maybe like holistic medicines or just like bring things that I never actually really looked into further, just from the yogi perspective. It's just like even simple things as breathing can help your overall health.
Yeah, exactly. And then, actually, it's funny you mentioned that because that's a big part of, if you like, the five pillars of self mastery are the pillars, but there's the buckets of energy, evidence, and experience. That's why I use in my method as well. So we use a lot of yogic techniques on energy as well because I found them to be phenomenally powerful in my own life. And when I looked back in my medical days, I realized that a lot of people I saw healed through these energetic practices as well. So it's not just about the science. We've also got to listen to people, be open to their beliefs. Beliefs are the most powerful ways that people can heal. If you
Mm.
really believe something's going to work, it's likely to work. And and then you've also got to bring into account some of the kind of energetic practices and spiritual practices.
Something else I kind of want to pick your brain about that I've heard you mention before is that you believe that people subconsciously fear success. Kind of want to just ask your thoughts on that, of you mentioning that, and why is that something that you believe in?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that question, and you've obviously watched that video. 100%. It's something. Everything I'm going to share with you is something I've personally experienced as well. I very much put myself in the coaching scene. I've received a lot of coaching. I've done dozens of courses and read hundreds of books. And so it's something I noticed in myself. And I think a lot of us have this thing. Actually, this relates to the biggest misconception that the world teaches us, which essentially says that I love me when the world loves me. And the most powerful thing about self compassion, or compassion as I teach, is that there's a love that exists that doesn't rely on anything else, it's unconditional. And so we can often fear success because fear is about loss and contraction. And so we fear who we're going to lose, what we're going to lose. We fear the transformation, we fear the change that comes with success. Now, these narratives, what you begin to realize, they're not actually our narratives. They're what I like to call not mine narratives. We form internal chatter in our minds, not from our true self, but from the ego mind, the social mask, the conditioning that we hear from our mum, our dad, the society and world around us. And of course, it's natural, right? Because as humans, we want to be a part of a tribe. James Clear's book beautifully says that. All behavioral science says that. We want to be part of the tribe, and
Right.
we'll do whatever we can, even if it's to our own pain and suffering, to stay in the tribe. And by virtue, success says that you're going to be different from everybody else, right? That's why if you look at the bell curve, you're going to be achieving different things, accomplishing different things. So naturally, people fear that because they fear they're going to lose the belonging, the connection, the love of people outside of you. And so, what self compassion does is it shows you that there's a love that exists within you that is always there, that's present for every single person. It doesn't discriminate between age, race, sex, what you've done. It doesn't matter who you are, where you've been, or even where you're going, that we all deserve to be loved. And this is the essential message, right? Because it's very subtle, the messages that get sent out to you, even in the self development world. Buy this program and you will love yourself more. You will approve of yourself more. You will be complete once you achieve that number of dollars per month, or once you get the girl or the man that you desire, then you'll be good enough. It's very, very subtle. And of course it plays on that because, as humans, we're prone to scarcity, we're prone to negativity bias and fear. And so we'll tap into those messages. I'm flipping the complete opposite of that, which says you are whole enough, complete, exactly as you are. That's what compassion teaches you, imperfectly, right now in this moment. And that's the beauty of compassion. Anyone can start wherever you are. It's innate within all of our hearts. In fact, we can prove with science that the genes for kindness and compassion, they're some of the oldest genes in our bodies. The genes that code and release the hormone oxytocin, which is a love and connection, a bonding hormone, some of the oldest genes in our bodies. So, yeah, I think people can sometimes get lost in, as we all do, and I would say I've been guilty of that many times. We're seeking some completeness, some wholeness in the next book, course, podcast thing. You can still do all those things; they're beautiful things, but from a place of compassion right now for yourself.
So you provide services on compassion mastery experience. So what kind of service is that? And maybe explain to our listeners what people can obtain from that experience.
Yeah, sure. I'd love to do that. I mean, probably the best way of doing that is by sharing a story or a few stories. So the compassion mastery experience came about because, like I've just shared, I've been in a lot of programs myself. I've had a lot of coaching myself, and essentially, what I was looking to do is heal and remove the invisible stressful blocks to growth, or what we could call awaken self mastery. I wanted to find something that would help you both elevate your impact, right, making a bigger difference in the world, but without sacrificing your peace. I wanted to find something that could create the time freedom, the freedom that you wanted, again, without the sacrifices that most people go through. And so, what I realized from studying, like I said, these different disciplines, neuroscience, lifestyle medicine, positive psychology, is that there's a certain sequence, a certain formula that we can go through. And I realized that the biggest problem that we all have in this world, whether we're aware of it or not, is a lack of self compassion. So, self compassion is the ability to embrace, enhance, and release any experience or state. And so, you think about the power of that, no matter what it is you want. Maybe you want to create more income in your business. Maybe you're somebody who wants to create a bigger social media following, more impact, go on podcasts, speak. Maybe you're someone who wants to make a difference to the world or find more peace in your relationships. What I've learned is that it always starts with a full acceptance of who you are right now in this moment. And so that's the most powerful thing that you can do is you can get clear on your emotional states that you want to create, align the beliefs, and then design habits from that point on. So compassion mastery experience for founders, usually wellness founders, people who are looking to elevate their impact without sacrificing their peace. And yeah, I've seen some really wonderful things happen with people. You know, I've seen illnesses being healed. I've seen people come off addictions, prescription medications. I've had the pleasure of watch people make hundreds of thousands per month in their business and give back to charities. Yeah, it's been a beautiful experience to work with people closely one on one. I could dive into more details, but I'll let you ask some more questions first.
No, that's great. And if anyone is interested, would they just email you or like kind of slide in your DMs or something like that?
Yeah, I'm very blessed to have a wait list right now. I work with one-on-one people, usually people who are wellness founders. So if you've got a company and you're looking to grow, but you're feeling blocked, maybe you're blocked with a lack of clarity, you're blocked with some negative relationships. Maybe you've got a history of success, but it comes at a cost. If you're that kind of specific person, definitely send me a direct message on Instagram or an email is absolutely fine. I still do things in a very personal way because I work with a small number of people in a very deep way. Um, so listen to the podcast, we'll get to know one another and take it from there. But like I say, at the moment, I'm blessed to have a full list. I came on here because I love sharing this very important message of self compassion,
Yeah.
which I believe can help people, whether we work together or not. That's the message that I'm here to share. That if you choose compassion first, you're going to see some profound things go on in your life. You're going to see more emotional resilience, number one. Number two, you're going to see more acceptance, worthiness of who you are. You're not going to be as insecure. Just think about that. That's so powerful. And third of all, you're going to be more motivated in the long run. Why? Because you're not relying on these kind of instant hits, this instant gratification. You're going to have this delayed gratification because you accept who you are. You're going to stay motivated because you're not going to be criticizing yourself along the whole journey. And so, for anyone that didn't fit that person that I shared, I'm sure you can benefit from self-compassion. I really believe it's available to all of us, and it's very, very important for living a fulfilled and free and flourishing life.
I like that we were talking a little bit about our shared experience in reading Atomic Habits by James Clear. And I asked this like any recommendations that you can provide for our listeners, but also maybe just for me too. I'm interested. Any like literature that you kind of recommend to people that you do one-on-one coaching with?
Oh my gosh, so many. Where to start? I mean, one of the most powerful books to read about self-compassion is Professor Kristen Neff's work, and she's the pioneer of self-compassion. So her book, Self-Compassion, it's called Self-Compassion, is one of the most profound books in the research. But one of the books I actually have right here, which is my all-time favorite book, I've read about 12 times, and it was a secret for a long time before I came
Okay.
out the spiritual closet. And it's Seven Spiritual Laws of Success by Deepak Chopra. Very, I mean, I think it has something like a hundred
Oh,
thousand reviews on Amazon. It's a huge book, um, but the profoundness of those concepts really marries up a lot of the wisdom that I learned about as a doctor and how to essentially um, accomplish what's meaningful, but with ease. There's a lot of people that accomplish things to themselves. They accomplish things, but they realize it's not meaningful. Or there's a lot of people who accomplish things, but it comes at a cost, like the cost of their health, or their loved ones, or people that they really care about. And I think that's a very important message, that you don't need to sacrifice that. When you really work on the inner game, when you look inwards and you heal these invisible blocks that we all have, then let's take a quick example of this, right? If you think about how busy your mind is on a day-to-day basis, can you just imagine if you had 50% fewer um, overthinking, internal thoughts? We call it rumination. Like, you just say, imagine if we have 60,000 thoughts a day. Imagine if you just managed to actually not have as many repetitive,
Yeah.
frustrating thoughts going. And I can tell you that, what we find is that thinking and feeling goes in a loop. And so the reason why people overthink is quite simply because of suppressed emotions. And so that's how self-compassion helps. And you can embrace your emotional states. All of a sudden, the internal chatter just quietens down. Boom. And then you get the voice, the higher self, the voice that can give you intuition, synchronicities, amazing new ideas, creativity. It sounds crazy, but actually, it's very well documented in research that meditation, like the transcendental meditation, is well practiced by Hollywood A-listers and singers and stars because it enhances creativity. How does it do that? The same thing I mentioned. You release those emotions, you release all the stress, and then all of a sudden you access this higher state of mind, this higher state of thinking.
It's funny, before you mentioned meditation, I was saying meditation in my head, like when you were talking about like overthinking, and I was gonna add to it, but then you already mentioned it, was just meditation. I've always been like an overthinker, thinking too much, and it had stressed me out and caused a lot of stress in my life until I started getting more into my practice of meditation, to the point that now, I mean, I'm trying to extend it more than it is now, but I do practice meditating 20 minutes in the morning, one of the first things I do. And it does clear space in my mind to like not prevent me from overthinking at other points in the day. Because I can just, all those thoughts that like hit me all at once are like just hit me over and over again. It hits me in the morning, just kind of plan and strategize my day when I meditate, and it clears a lot of my thoughts.
Yeah, that's cool. And I'm glad that you found such benefit in it. And what kind of meditation do you do? Is it mindfulness? Do you do visualizations? What kind of?
I guess it would just be mindfulness. I sit in my patio, just like have some fresh air and just meditate. I'm not familiar with other practices though.
Okay, amazing. Well, let me share one right now that everyone
Please,
can
yeah.
try at home. And there's many different kinds of meditation, and they all have benefits. And I studied many different kinds. So I started off with mindfulness, and then I went and learned loving kindness. I learned the Silver Method. Then I went and learned transcendental meditation as well. And so they're all beautiful things, and they all have their purpose and their intention. But one that is has the ability to work really fast with basically no practice. And I kind of liken this to, if anyone watches the Harry Potter movies, I kind of liken this to the Patronus charm, where you focus on a loving memory, and then Harry, conjures this charm that banishes away these dementors.
Hmm.
These are called loving meditations. And there's a Stanford research study that says 7 minutes of loving kindness meditations, where you basically close your eyes, relax your body, picture someone that you love, and you picture a loving memory of them. You literally can picture a light going down and filling that person up with love. And maybe you say some words like, may you be happy, may you be safe, may you be free of suffering. You don't even need to say that, but if you want to, you can. Do that for 7 minutes every day, and you're going to have increased feelings of connectedness, reduce levels of cortisol, reduce levels of stress. And so the reason why this is so powerful is a lot of the negative emotions that we have, fear, blame, shame, anger, guilt, anxiety, it stems from us feeling disconnected, like disconnected from our values, disconnected from other people, disconnected from society and the world around us. And what the loving kindness meditations teaches you is that we are all connected. You are me, I am you, and there is a force that connects all of us that can help you, not only feel peaceful but also make you very high performing as well.
Mm.
Um, so that'd be cool. I've got a video on my profile about that and a lot of research about that. So loving kindness meditations is one I would recommend.
No, I love that, and I was practicing a little bit as you were explaining it. I also wanna mention you have a podcast I may have seen something about that you called Shift My Beliefs. Do you wanna explain a little bit what
Yeah.
that's about?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So it's not a podcast, but I wanted to put it on podcast channels because I didn't see this being done anywhere else. And I always like to look for opportunities where I can do something different in the industry to help people for free. And so what I realized, like I said in our method of the compassion mastery experience, it's about releasing emotions, embracing beliefs, and enhancing habits. And I realized that beliefs are the absolute cornerstone for the whole way we view the world. And often the reason why we feel blocked is because of our beliefs. So I studied it and found there was about 20 different limiting beliefs. And I categorized these based on these three existential questions. Am I safe? Do I belong? Am I good enough? And all of the beliefs, like I'm incapable, I'm unworthy, I'm stupid, I'm not good enough, um, I'm unlovable, they all come under this bracket of these existential questions that we're often not conscious of, but we're asking ourselves. And so I strongly recommend you guys go on and have a listen to these 2-minute intro episodes. And they're going to give you a lot of awareness of, oh, that's why I undercommit on my goals. That's why I don't have any boundaries with people. Or, oh, that's why I always procrastinate or I feel reactive or I don't have enough time in the day. And, that alone, when I started to uncover these things in myself, well, that's when I can fully accept myself. I didn't blame myself or judge myself as much anymore. And I could accept that, oh, there's reasons for this. It's not because I'm defective or something's wrong with me. It's like, I'm human like you. We all have our things. And so I'd encourage you to have a look at the Shift My Beliefs. And you've got 2-minute intro episodes. And then the rest is a fusion of some special binaural beats that puts your brainwaves into the right
Oh,
state.
cool.
And somewhere in between, yeah, and somewhere in between visualization and hypnosis with the energy of compassion. And the reviews are really awesome. So I'd really love it if you guys check that out because people have seen some amazing results. Again, like healing traumas, relationships that they were really struggling with. People committing to their goals more. People setting boundaries. So check it out. Yeah, I'd love to hear your response.
No, I'll look into it. Something else that also that I find interesting that you offer, and definitely if our listeners are interested, is that you provide a newsletter called the Believe in Growth newsletter. Can you explain what that newsletter is about?
Yes, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I a lot of love goes into that. And again, just to give a little story, a visual that sort of instigated that newsletter was I had the story of a Chinese bamboo tree which doesn't grow for almost 5 years, but the farmers tend to it, care for it, water it frequently, and then in the fifth year it grows almost 90 foot in the space of a few months. And so that's the premise of the Believe in Growth newsletter. It's 1 minute actionable insights that's going to help you grow, help you remove the invisible stressful blocks to growth through the power of compassion and awaken self mastery. And the reason why it's different is there's three things that I do that's different from other people in the industry. It's the combination of these three things. So we combine scientific evidence, so the worlds of neuroscience, positive psychology, etc., with energy practices, stuff from yogic wisdom and spiritual background. And then I also bring in my own personal experience of seeing dozens of thousands of people as a doctor and just understanding people's problems intuitively because of the amount of people I've spoken to. So we bring these three elements: energy, evidence, experience. And each week you get an email sort of slightly based on the difference in that. And again, the reason why I did that is a lot of the newsletters that I followed, I liked them, but there wasn't the variety. Like I wanted the variety, and they tended to be quite similar. So that's why I brought this favor. For example, this week I just wrote one about one of my clients asking me, how do I stop seeking validation? I know that's something a lot of people struggle with. I struggle with that a lot as well. And then I also had one about healing the root chakra, feeling safe and grounded and calm and present. How do we do that in a simple way?
No, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. And there's something that I always like to ask my guests and just ask them about like special routines, specific rituals they kind of follow throughout their day, throughout their week, something they specifically had to do at some point, just on a routine basis. I know we were talking about meditation for a bit, so that's something that I would love to like. Maybe you can mention like when or how long you usually practice that. But is there any of those kind of practices that you could share for our listeners?
Yes, loads. So I actually I can see my board of rituals that I have. So after this call, I'll be doing that. I'm going to share something a bit different that a lot of people don't talk about. So this is a ritual I do in between Zoom calls, okay? Because I know a lot of people stare at their computers or TVs, stare at their screens a lot, and they feel drained afterwards. And this makes sense because our eyes, um, our visual cortex of our brain takes up about 50% of our processing power. So remember www.eyes, www.eyes. So after this call or after any calls, the first thing I'll do is I'll close my eyes. Or if I can get outside and look at nature, that's amazing. But often I'll close my eyes, and then the first W stands for whoosh, which is breathe. So I'll close my eyes, place my hand on, and I'll slow my breath. This is getting rid of any stress, getting back to this parasympathetic state. And then the other two W's, www dot, is water. Very, very underrated. A drink, I hydrate myself, and there's a whole system to that. We're going to go into that. And then the other W is walk. So there's a really simple way to break up your day so you don't have those energy dips. Close your eyes for a few minutes. Breathe at a slow rhythm, like 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, all through the nose. Drink your water and go for a walk. You can do that all in about 5 minutes. And, I guarantee you're going to feel more rejuvenated just through that practice.
That's great. I'll definitely start practicing that. I looked at a computer a lot, especially when I do these podcasts and edit everything. I will definitely practice that. Thank you. Something additional that I want to ask is like any practices that help motivate you that you can recommend for our listeners and just, things to help practice in achieving your goals.
Yes, absolutely. So again, my central message is self-compassion, and the research is really clear that people who are self-compassionate, that means that instead of beating yourself up, you're kind to yourself. It means that instead of overthinking, you become present. It means instead of trying to isolate yourself, you seek for the common humanity, you seek connection in all of our human experience. That is what will keep you motivated in the long run. So what's the practice for that? Well, loving kindness meditations is one of them. Anything that fills your cup first. See, motivation, as you all know from James Clear and from BJ Fogg, it waxes and wanes. So you want to make sure you build rituals every day that fill you up. And the most simple way to do that is to ask what you used to do as a child that make you feel calm and at peace when you're by yourself. For example, for me, I used to sing to my favorite songs in my bedroom for hours. And so I know that when I'm feeling demotivated, I take a step outside of all the things I have to do, which is 100, and I put some tunes on, I start rapping, I start singing, just have fun. I fill myself up. And then from that place, I can do work. I can get into my flow state, I can work. And so this is the big thing about motivation and keeping your goals. It's, can you be consistent in the long run? Um, and actually, if you do deep work, which I'm sure you're aware of, then you can get enormous amounts done. And in the long run, without burning out, as long as you keep yourself filled up with self compassion along the way.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. As we're wrapping up, is there anything that our listeners should watch out for that you're currently working on?
Yes. I mean, I at the moment I'm really simplifying everything, and you'll see over these next kind of 6 months more content coming out, more stories, and probably refinement of everything that I'm doing. I'm trying to do less, but at an even higher level. So you'll probably see that. I think that there's a lot of people throwing all kinds of things out there. I'm actually stripping everything down and serving my one-on-one clients as deep as possible. Probably see me on a few more podcasts. You may well see me doing some more speaking. But the best way is just to follow, and wherever you are, I mean, the central message for anyone today is to choose compassion right now in this moment, to embrace, to enhance and release any emotional state, any experience that you've got right now, whether it's separation and illness, whether you've got business difficulties. That's the message I want everyone to see, is that instead of what everyone else is doing in the world, which is they're on this treadmill of success, they're trying to choose mastery in every moment without choosing compassion first. That's the central message I'd love everyone to hear. Look inwards, choose compassion, and go from there.
Thank you. And you've mentioned so much great things already just from what was just being said right now. Do you have any final thoughts that you would like to leave with our listeners?
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, that central message, that there's a specific sequence, that nothing is more important than your emotional well-being, mastering your emotions, choosing compassion for yourself and the world around you. And really, honestly, I can say with truth and working with a lot of people, looking at the science, looking at the spiritual texts, when you do that, synchronicities, signs, magic, all kinds of things opens up for you. And I'd really encourage everybody to choose that path um, right now in this moment.
Nilesh, I appreciate this conversation. This, I think our listeners could grab a lot that we've discussed from this conversation. I definitely encourage them to go through all your socials and all your material and just want to say sponge up everything that all the knowledge that you're definitely sharing. But I appreciate this conversation and thank you so much for joining me on Someday with Jay Barsky.
Thanks. It's been such a pleasure. And I really appreciate everyone. I look forward to hearing from some of you.
Thanks for listening to our episode with Dr. Nilesh Satguru. Follow him on all his socials, which you may find in the episode notes. I hope you enjoyed our episode. Please rate and comment on the podcast to help make it grow. If you wish to follow me, all my socials are at I am Jay Barsky. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you soon.